Great to see you. Today is about emotions and especially talking to entrepreneurs, business owners who have a special relationship with emotions and the way that it impacts their business. This is part 4. I've been doing a training every 2 weeks. So today's session is about 35 minutes and there'll be 5 minutes for Q&A. And I want to assess the negative impact of emotions in business and explain to you why it's important and the fact that it affects our decision making. I want to raise your awareness as well of personal growth. We have to grow ourselves in order to grow our business. And I genuinely believe that we become the weakest link in our business. The final thing I wanted to do was to provide some practical strategies as well, help you to stop, pause, and think consciously. I want to embrace the mood mountain. It's a beautiful image. And also to learn to dance in the rain, because I love that phrase. And also to support our lifetime value on this earth, because I think that's really important too. Now, just a quick recap of previous sessions. The first training was about thinking and how thoughts become beliefs, and that we are meaning-making machines, and our subconscious stores everything that happens to us. It knows everything. Training number 2 was all about negative automatic thinking and looking at thought patterns. The main thing there was that I have, and you have, a little 7-year-old inside of you who sometimes you bring to work. Training number 3 was the concept of the big black filing cabinet that we all have in our brain where we store stuff, and the thinking patterns and our behaviors. Lots of things become automatic, and therefore the onus is on us to become more aware, more conscious so that we can catch that. First question, do you believe emotions negatively impact business decisions? Now, I want you to think about this on a scale of 1 to 10 and just write down a figure for me. Number 1 is you're not sure. No, you don't think it does. And at the very top end, number 10 is yes, Joy, it's a 10. Of course they do. We'll talk about that at the end. And if you'd like to drop your comments in the chat, I might be able to see some figures that are coming up that might be useful. Let's have a quick look. Ooh, yes. Depends on the person. Yeah, voice of reason there, Cordelia. I love that. So thank you guys for doing that. Please note whether do you believe emotions negatively impact business decisions? It's a yes, 10, or a no, be a 0. A little bit about me. I'm an emotional intelligence coach and I'm a mentor. I'm also a therapist. I've been doing that in the UK for a good, coming up to 20 years. It's a long time, actually. But it's a great job. I love it. I do actually really love helping people with their problems, and I like seeing the end results, that transformation, as I call it. I'm also an author. I've written a book called Navigating Stress in 2021, and it does talk you through the real ins and outs of stress in a very gentle way. It was written during COVID. You know how stressed we all were. It was something that was accessible and that you could use as a bit of a guide. I work with business owners and entrepreneurs today, looking at your psychological strength and helping you to recognize the personal and financial pain that happens in business, also the shame and the embarrassment of losing your business. Lots of emotions that we don't really like to talk about, but they're at play. And that's why I really do want to talk about emotions, because people just don't do it enough. Now, the big question is, why do emotions negatively impact business? The good news for me and for you is that you're human. Entrepreneurs, business owners, whatever you like to define yourself as, you are a human being. And I will say to you, so you can hear it loud and clear, you're a human being first, and then you're a business owner, which is a close second, isn't it? And as I said, I want to talk about the psychology that's needed to grow your business. The bad news, though, is we have an ancient survival mechanism inside of us, and it throws up lovely feelings like stress and anxiety, and it really messes up our decision making. There's not much you can do about that, I'm afraid. That's just the way that response is. It's useful most of the time. And also, I want you to recognize that we have things going on the inside, the biological and the physiological things happening to us, and they will trigger stress and anxiety and other emotions, again, whether we like it or not. It will operate automatically. And at this point, I think it might be useful to look at the difference between emotions and feelings, because the two words are used interchangeably, and I may end up doing exactly the same. An emotion emanates from within us, A lot of the nerve endings for these emotions are in our gut. There's a lot that's spoken now about the gut and the heart and the head connection. And it's because there's a connection between the three things. I even call it three brains, not just having one brain. The heart considered to be a brain, and your gut can be considered to be a brain. And when the emotions are registered, it's actually our brain that reinterprets it into a feeling. So that's why I could have a different feeling to you, have an identical experience, but a different feeling. So these are the six emotions that we are born with: anger, fear, joy, sadness, disgust, and surprise. Very, very useful emotions. Anger and fear for survival, fight, and flight. Joy, just to bond with people. Sadness, again, to recognize when we're in a place where we need to perhaps withdraw or need to conserve our energy, or again, connect with people. Disgust and surprise, they're very much connected, which is interesting, especially if you were going to eat something really terrible. I think you'd need to be disgusted. And if it was something that was going to affect you in terms of poisoning your body, you do want to be disgusted. Surprise is interesting. I think that's just recognizing, and we're always looking around. I believe that we have a message that's saying, am I safe? Am I safe? All the time. It's like this big alarm system that we have inside of us. 8 emotions were put forward as a number by Robert Plutchik. And some of you may be very familiar with him because he designed a beautiful emotions wheel. It's really, really gorgeous, but not many people know how to use it, which is the sad thing. But if you get into it, it's really clever because you can combine things. You can combine, let's say, anger with joy, and it could almost point out what the in between emotion would be. Because we're always talking about increasing our emotional vocabulary. But I must admit, humans, we do stick to the main ones, and I'm guilty of that too. The final result is that emotions do impact performance and productivity. It affects our ability to think. We stop having good quality thinking, erratic thinking, or not thinking at all. Also, it impacts the energy that's available for your brain. The brain is a very hungry material. Although it's 3 pounds in weight, it needs an awful lot of energy. And if we're spending a lot of time processing things that we don't need to, because we're churning up a lot of biological data inside of us and having to deal with it, it's taking that energy away from our brain. And I know you might not believe me, guys. So I've got a surprise for you. I'm going to test it out and get you to test it out too. It's a mental performance exercise. It's not difficult. And it's going to test the quality of your thinking, or your ability to think whilst under a little bit of stress. But first of all, I want you to just think about the number 100. I want you to take 3 away from 100. I hope you've got an answer. And I want you just to take another 3 away from the number that you achieve until I say stop, which will be in about 5 seconds. So go. Hopefully you found that reasonably easy. Yeah, let's have a look at the chat. Perhaps you can tell me if that was an easy exercise for you. Yes, no, Y, or an N will do, guys. Love to know how you found that. I haven't finished with you on this one. Now I'm going to ask you to do exactly the same thing. The number 100, take 3 away from it. The answer you get, take 3 away from it and keep going. But this time, I am going to be telling you what I'm going to be having for my dinner tonight, because you're going to be so excited and so interested about it. And I will tell you when to stop. Okay. So please start your exercise. 100, take away 3 equals, and keep going. And by the way, yes, I am going to be having my dinner tonight, probably in another hour's time. I'm planning to have a bit of chicken, and that's because if my partner's around, he'll cook for me. But hopefully, he may do me some potatoes and some green beans, because I'm not a good cook. I'm really not. If I had my way, which I may do if he doesn't come back in time, I'm going to have some prawns. I'm going to stop talking. So it might be useful for you to just tell me in the chat, was it easier to do this? So the first time round, it should have been reasonably easy. And the second time round, it should have been a little bit more challenging. Isn't that interesting? And this is to show you that we're running our businesses, we're trying to make lots of decisions, things are happening around us, and we kick ourselves for not being able to focus and concentrate. Yet, for this simple exercise, which you had a lot of pre-warning about, and I told you what I was going to do, you can see that there's a lot of internal automatic things happening, not totally in your control. And that's quite fascinating in itself. I won't do this one, but this exercise is about how our biology can also affect the way that we think. When I'm hungry, it can affect the way I think, I know. But what about if you're in a meeting or you're talking to someone and you suddenly just notice, oh my goodness me, I really fancy going to the toilet for a wee. I just want you to remember a time, whether it affected your concentration or whether it improved your concentration or whether it just didn't make any difference. When we're in a state where our biology is demanding that we do something, again, it's really hard to focus. And I was watching a really good video by Dr. Alan Watkins, and he noted that also people actually lose their hearing. So if you're in a meeting, you stop hearing the conversation. You're so focused on what's going on inside of you and what the urge is asking you to do that you can't pay attention. I think that's a great exercise. So performance anxiety makes your brain shut down. It can be very difficult to think straight. If you've just been watching the Olympics or you watched it, yeah, I don't know how they do it. They really get in the zone and block out all of that distraction, all of the internal stuff that's going on for them to still be winners. I'm very impressed by that. Emotions take over, they're fast. And if you've read a book called The Chimp Paradox, it tells you a lot about the brain. In the book, he talks about the monkey mindset. It's very impetuous. It just wants to do its thing. It's very emotional and it's quick, much quicker than our smarter thinking brain, which is like a turtle or a tortoise by comparison. Now, entrepreneurs have feelings and emotions too. So I do want you to be kind to yourself, guys, please. Excitement, stress, determination, joy, anxiety, frustration, pride, loneliness, overwhelm, guilt, shame, and fear. Some of these feelings are really quite powerful and they do lead to difficulties in business. They can lead to poor decision making, which I've just shown you with that exercise, can lead to difficult relationships, can also lower your productivity. It can cause conflict, disagreements between you and other people, which could ruin your reputation. You're building up your reputation. It's a world where we're building up all of this money in the bank in terms of who we are. We don't really want to get into conflicts that we don't need to be in and damage our reputation. Also, weak leadership, it can create that, and poor communication, poor negotiation skills, and no growth or slow growth. And I'm sure there are lots more that you could add as well. An entrepreneur's journey, it's really for us to recognize the thought and the emotion connection and the cycles because they work together, the habits, the patterns, and try and minimize the impact that that's having in your business. But there's also another problem. And you know me by now, guys, there will always be another problem. There is a secret thought to emotion love affair going on. And you're probably thinking, Joy has really cracked up this time. What is she on about today? Thoughts and emotions, there's a loop, a cycle between them. They talk to each other, they communicate. They really cannot stay away from one another. And I say, even when it's a toxic relationship, just like in real life, they find it difficult to stay away from each other. There's such a complex network of data which is being churned out from inside. And thoughts are always having to pay attention and make it make sense. So there is a close link between these two, between memories being created, the brain searching for associations. There's a lot going on. And there's another complication. There are 3 people in that relationship. You know, that doesn't work out very well in real life, does it? It really doesn't. But between the emotions and the thoughts, something comes between it. The biological sensations. You're paying a lot of attention to the biological sensations, like we saw with the Wii challenge, but your heart rate going up or feeling quite tense, tightness in the chest. You have noticed that you're feeling quite sweaty or you're feeling a bit of indigestion. Or for me, butterflies in my stomach, churning and gurgling. These are clear signs to me that I've turned on my stress response. I know it immediately that that's what's happened. So yeah, it is the third person in this equation, and it is powerful. In fact, it starts first, then it talks to your emotions. The emotions then talk to your brain, and your brain turns that into a feeling. What a chain reaction that is. And then you get your result, which is your behavior. So the behavior is at the end of all of these things. But sometimes all we ever see is our behavior without realizing the deep network and deep connections that have been happening way before we acted and did something. And the brain, as I said, is very hungry for energy. It needs it to make decisions. If we're spending it on the wrong things, then when we do come around to doing something really, really important or attending something that really matters to us, we really don't have the energy for it. And I've used a representation here of batteries, but okay, our brain is not like a battery. But let's imagine the energy contained in one unit of a battery cell represented one thought. And then if we needed to do a slightly bigger decision, we'd need a couple of more, perhaps five. And if we had a really ginormous decision to make, we just need lots and lots of energy because the brain will be seeking that energy, be looking for it. And what we can do sometimes when we're trying to regain energy is eat. Eat sugar. I know it. I love chocolate. I know when I'm really in that space, I can be mindlessly eating chocolate. Not very useful, but it happens. And there's another problem, guys. Just pile another one on. We have 50 to 70,000 automatic thoughts a day. Thoughts do become beliefs, but thoughts can lie to us. They are not necessarily true, which is terrible. When I first heard that, I thought, why didn't someone tell me this? I just believe everything that I think. I really do. I used to. I don't anymore, of course. But yeah, thoughts lie to me. That was an eye opener for me. And the beliefs that we then form, they become the rules on how we live our life. And that is because we're repeating something over and over and over again. That's all a belief is. It's the repetition of an idea, an opinion, an assumption. And then it begins to feel extremely real, very, very concrete. And then if I throw into the mix that we have biases, again, things which our brain gets tricked by, you can see that it gets very, very complicated. There's a lot of illogical behavior happening in business. It surprises us and it catches us off guard, and it catches off guard the people around us too. There's someone receiving it. People are surprised by our responses and how we're behaving and thinking and what we're saying. So, very interesting what happens in business if you're not paying attention to these emotions. Now, I do have a free resource and I put the link in the chat. It's at the very, very top. There's a sheet that I've created which looks at 40 thoughts, negative thoughts that business owners can have, which may be impacting what's happening for you. You might not be able to read it entirely from this sheet. It's quite small, but just the odd fleeting thought that I'm not smart enough to solve this problem. How about I don't even have the right skill to succeed in this business? I mean, these thoughts are just not positive. And if we're spending time on focusing on the wrong things, we're burning energy, and that energy could be used to help us with our decision making. The other thing which you can also download, which is in the comments at the very top, is negative thinking patterns and habits. Here's a little selection, black and white thinking, predictive thinking, procrastinating. There's a lot of things that happen. Feel free to download that sheet. So I hope you're getting the picture. We really take a lot of things for granted and we don't want to be rethinking things all the time. Slowing down and being a bit more mindful about what's happening to us, tapping into the reality as opposed to what our memory is reminding us of is absolutely important. Because emotions are neutral when they're generated. It's a sensation in our body until we plug it into, guess what? Our automatic thinking system, which is the brain. So once it starts talking to the brain had to do a little bit of translation. I call it emo speak, emotional speak, and also sensation speak, stuff that's happening inside our body, into some kind of brain speak. So the brain is trying to make this make sense, trying to work out what this feeling is, looking at all the information it has from the past about what this experience was and what it meant and where it filed it. And when the brain's doing this, this kind of very bad pattern matching sometimes. It can miss the obvious. It can miss the elephant that is in the room, which is why we can sometimes miss the elephant that's in the room. Imagine speaking a different language. It just gets lost in translation. And as human beings, we do want to avoid difficult, uncomfortable feelings. Who wouldn't want to do it? We don't want to feel these things. So we kind of avoid stuff. We just make it mean something that makes us feel calm or good. So I hope you're still with me, guys, because I am going to continue. I'm going to move on to some of the solutions. So common emotional challenges and overwhelm. This is a very big sheet full of lots of information. Okay. I don't expect you to get through it, but just the top line, overwhelm is so much a part of my life. I will tell you, hands up, feeling that what I've got on my plate is too much and I can't cope. I don't have the skills to do it. I don't have the resources to do it. And it is excruciating. So overwhelm is a real thing, and it can come about through lots of things in business. We do have a lot of things to do, a lot of hats to wear. There's a lot going on. So I'm going to be skipping through this, and also I could look at anxiety in more detail. But I'm sure you all know how it feels. Now, that picture is pretty scary in my books. Um, that's got me feeling anxious. I better move away from it quickly. My brain has already started to interpret a picture and it's not real. My brain's thinking, Joy, is there a problem? So that's how quick the reactions are inside of us. I won't go through this whole sheet, as I said. I'm going to skip it, guys. But anxiety, I'm sure you felt it. Nervousness, worry, fear. Fear and anxiety, they kind of work together. And it is because of our survival response. I was going to talk about shame because this is something that perhaps we don't admit to ourselves. And I don't often admit to myself that I feel shame or ashamed, even put an A at the front of it sometimes. That embarrassment that I feel sometimes, even, talking to you guys today, I feel very safe talking to you today. But sometimes I can get like quite nervous and worry about how I'm coming across and feel inadequate or embarrassed. It's not a great feeling. If you want to have the rest of the slides, please feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn. So emotions do have uncomfortable, very uncomfortable physiological sensations, which we try and get rid of. And emotions, they take over very quickly. They're there for a reason. Remember, I mentioned that book, The Chimp Paradox. I want us to start looking at some solutions, and it's around challenging the automatic thinking or the automatic behavior that you might be doing and I might be doing. I'd like you to become a sensation spotter, or should I say a sensational sensation spotter. I'm not asking you to become the star of the show or go on the stage and screen and be an actress or an actor, but I want you to notice and pay more attention to some of the bodily signals that are happening inside of you, because they can be very useful. And do you remember the bad news that we have an ancient survival mechanism? Stress and anxiety, you can't get away from it, guys. I'm sorry. It messes up our decision making. And then we have these internal biological responses too. Again, we can't stop that. Sorry, guys, bad news there. It operates automatically. But the good news is there is one part of our physical system that we can actually think about and control. We try to control a lot of things inside our body. You might say, oh, my digestive system, oh, why can't it just be a little bit quicker? It's not going to happen. But the heartbeat can be controlled. Heart rate variability. Some of you may have a watch, an Apple Watch that can read that. I don't have those things, guys, but you can get this information from those places. Or if you were in front of a doctor, they'd use an electrocardiogram on you and you see it on the screen go up and down. The good news is that if you're doing that and controlling that, then you're staying in a reasonably calm space. It gives you quality thinking. You have access to that and you can learn. Now, this is one way of looking at it. It's called a window of tolerance. And if you go on the internet, I'm sure you'll find different variations. But if you imagine the bit in the middle, the window of tolerance box, where emotions are used appropriately, that's where we live a lot of the time. And then you can see the bit above and the bit below, where sometimes we have too much activity and too much information coming through to us. And yeah, we're just antsy, tense. And at the very bottom of that window, There's hypoarousal, which is the opposite. There's not enough energy there. We're almost getting quite lethargic. We're freezing. And again, there are two places that the body can go to. But the middle window is where you want to be a lot of the time. And if you can, widen that window too, which is spend less time in the hyperarousal, spend less time in the hypoarousal, and spend more time controlling your ability to be in this space if you want to think straight. Now, this is just an example of if you were tracking your own, you could have days along the bottom and you could have down the side, you could have the intensity of something, but recognizing sometimes that if we're threatened, even if you threatened my reputation or my ego, I could go into that top half. It's not even necessarily a real life threatening thing. So just notice that it happens to us and it happens to business owners. Exercise number one was just about recognizing that you can have some control. And this is going to be me just winding down now, and we can begin to get calm and get you back to a good space. So hopefully you're sitting quietly and you're comfortable. I'd like you just to place your hand on your chest area. So just place it over your chest. And I want you just to notice that your heartbeat is there, which is good news, isn't it? And you could just check your pulse if you wanted to. Make sure that you're alive. Good. Now I want you to focus on your heartbeat. I want you to close your eyes and just concentrate on the rhythm of your heart. Notice if it's fast or slow or strong or faint. And then I want you to start just breathing in quickly and out quickly, like, and I want you to notice if that's changed your heart rate. And I'd also like you just to slow your breathing down. Just slow it down. Elongate that breath in, elongate that breath out. Again, notice whether the rhythm of your heartbeat changes. That's quite a simple exercise just to show you that you do have some control over what's happening for you. I'm not going to go into the details on the other methods, but thought catcher method, which is paying attention to what's happening in terms of what you're thinking. Catch that thought, check that thought, challenge that thought, and then change it. You know, I would love for you to be really good at doing that. And the other system is working a bit with the thought catching system, looking at your thoughts, emotions, and your actions, which is what the TEA stands for. And you could use a chart and you could begin to write down and see what's happening. What is the connection between that thought I had? What feeling did I have when I thought that? What action did I take when I had the feeling and the thought? And then you'd have one cycle, like one rep of what happens to you, which gives you the opportunity to change it. You can change one thing in there and it will change the system. It's easier to go in at the thought level and also at the behavioral level, the action level. It's less easy to say, I'm going to change my emotion, but you could write down, if I want this feeling, what would I have to think? And if I had those two, what would I end up doing? So you can begin to explore different ways of changing what's happening for you. So getting towards the end, guys, these thought sheets and the negative thinking habit patterns, they're there for you. They're in the chat box. So please feel free to download them. And please feel free to contact me on LinkedIn as well. Would love to continue conversations with you. And before you go, let's do the assessment. Okay, some of you who just joined didn't get a chance to do it, but I wanted you to assess whether you believe emotions negatively impact your business decisions. It's either a no, Joy, what are you on? What are you talking about? Or absolutely, yes, Joy, the whole world knows that. And because you've now been through at least half an hour of being around me, your figure might have changed. Curious to see if your figure's changed, guys. I shall quickly check chat. Yeah, what figure are you at now? Because that might be an interesting thing for me to quickly have a look at. Great. The entrepreneur's journey is to recognize your thought emotion cycles, your habits, your patterns, and minimize the impact in your business. And hopefully, I've covered all the things I said I would at the beginning, give you a way to assess the negative impact in business, raise your awareness of why it's important for us to grow as business owners so we can grow the business and make good decisions, and some practical strategies, which were fun, and embrace that mood mountain that happens in all of us and really do try and learn to dance in the rain and support your lifetime value for the planet. LTV, we use it in business. I've hijacked every single business term. I like to turn it into something that's more positive and useful for human beings. So that's me. I'm at the end now, guys, and more details, connect with me, joy@joylangley.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn, by all means. The replays for these videos, I'll send you the links as well. They're on YouTube. I'm slowly putting them up live. So if you wanted to see the previous ones, let me know too. And at this point, I do think you might have some questions for me. So on that happy note, I am going to stop the sharing and stop the